My name is Thea Bishop, and I was 61 years old when my son-in-law gave me a choice I never thought I would hear from someone I considered family. Either you start taking care of the kids full-time, Garrett said, standing across the kitchen island with his arms folded, or you'll need to find somewhere else to stay. He said it so calmly that for several seconds I honestly wondered if I had misunderstood him. If this story already has your heart racing, welcome. I'm glad you're here at Heartline Narratives. Before we go further, drop a comment and tell me where are you watching from, your country, your city. I read your comments, and I always love knowing where these stories reach. Note, this story contains fictional elements for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real people, names, or places is purely coincidental. But the lesson behind this story is something every family should remember. Let's continue. I had been living with my daughter Caroline and her family for almost 3 months. After my husband Edward died, I sold our old house because I couldn't bear maintaining a place filled with 30 years of memories by myself. Caroline had begged me to come stay with her. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone," she had said. "We have a beautiful guest room. Stay with us until you figure out what you want to do next." I believed her. The guest room was upstairs at the end of the hallway, across from the children's bathroom. It was small but comfortable, with a real bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the backyard. At first, I thought I had finally found my place after losing Edward. I helped with the children because I loved them. Owen was 9, Ruby was 6, and they had always been close to my heart. I made breakfast when Caroline had early meetings. I drove them to school when Garrett had to travel. I picked them up, helped with homework, made dinner, and sometimes read bedtime stories. None of it bothered me in the beginning. I was their grandmother. I wanted to be there for them. But slowly, helping became expected. Then expected became required. By the time Garrett stood in that kitchen giving me his ultimatum, I was doing almost everything. Laundry appeared outside my bedroom door. Grocery lists were left on the counter. Caroline started texting me during work hours asking whether I could pick up the children. Garrett stopped asking and simply assumed I would handle things. One evening, I had planned to attend a woodturning class at the community center, something I had loved doing with Edward years earlier. I was standing by the front door with my coat on when Caroline called from the kitchen. "Mom, could you stay tonight? Garrett has a late meeting and the kids need dinner." I looked at my coat, then at my daughter. "Sure," I said. I missed the class. I told myself there would be another one next week. There wasn't. Weeks later, when I finally started feeling like a permanent employee instead of a mother and grandmother, I tried to speak up. Nothing dramatic. I simply told Caroline I needed some time for myself. She looked confused. "Mom, your family. We thought you were happy here." I wanted to believe that. Then came the Saturday night when Garrett's promotion dinner was being planned. 14 people were invited. His boss would be there, his coworkers, friends, and apparently I was expected to cook everything. 7 dishes: prime rib, mashed potatoes, green beans, salad, shrimp cocktail, rolls, and cheesecake. When I asked whether I would actually sit with the guests, Caroline hesitated. "Mom, maybe it would be easier if you just stayed in the kitchen and handled things." I stared at her. "Stayed in the kitchen. Just for the evening," she said quickly. "It's important for Garrett." Something inside me finally became very still. That night I went upstairs to my guest room and sat on the edge of the bed. Edward's photograph was on the nightstand. I looked at it for a long time. Then I heard Garrett downstairs telling Caroline, "She's here anyway. It's not like we're asking her to do anything difficult." I closed my eyes. The next morning, I made my decision. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to make a dramatic announcement. I was simply going to leave. And 11 days later, they would discover exactly what my quiet absence had been doing to that house. The next morning, I woke before everyone else. It was just after 6. The house was silent except for the refrigerator humming downstairs. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked around the guest room I had slowly filled with my things. A framed photograph of Edward, 2 novels, a small jewelry box, a sweater draped over the chair, a vase Caroline had given me for Mother's Day. I suddenly realized how strange it was that almost everything I owned fit into one room. I had once had an entire house, a kitchen where I hosted Thanksgiving, a living room where Edward and I watched baseball, a garage where he kept his tools, a backyard where Caroline learned to ride a bicycle. Now I was being told to stay in the kitchen of somebody else's house because my presence at their dinner might be inconvenient. I got dressed quietly, then I went downstairs and made coffee. Garrett came into the kitchen around 7. He opened the refrigerator and looked inside. "Is breakfast ready?" he asked. I stared at him. "Good morning to you too." He gave me a confused look, as if I had made a joke he didn't understand. "Morning." Then he waited. That was when I knew he wasn't asking anymore. He was expecting. I made eggs for myself and toast. Nothing for him, nothing for Caroline. I sat at the table and ate slowly. Garrett eventually poured himself cereal. He didn't say anything, neither did I. Around 8, Caroline came downstairs. She looked at the empty stove, then at me. "Mom, aren't you making breakfast?" "Not today." Her eyebrows lifted. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." I wasn't angry. That almost frightened me. Anger would have been easier. Instead, I felt something much deeper, a quiet certainty. After breakfast, I went upstairs and opened my laptop. I searched for apartments in Westfield. 1-bedroom units, safe neighborhood, small kitchen, laundry in the building. I found 3 possibilities. I wrote down the numbers. Then I called my older daughter Margaret in Cleveland. "Mom," she answered immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing is wrong." I paused. "I think I'm going to move." Silence. Then she said, "Okay, do you need help?" No questions. No lecture. No attempt to convince me to stay, just help. I felt tears in my eyes. "Yes." "Then I'm helping." That afternoon, I went to the community center. The woodturning class was already halfway through its session, but the instructor recognized me. "Haven't seen you in a while," he said. I smiled. "I know." I stayed for the entire class. For the first time in months, I wasn't someone's mother, grandmother, babysitter, cook, or housekeeper. I was simply Thea. When I returned to Caroline's house that evening, Garrett was sitting in the living room. "Where were you?" he asked. "Out." "We needed you." I looked at him. "For what?" He hesitated. "The kids," I nodded. "They have parents." He stared at me. It was the first time I had ever said something like that. I went upstairs without another word. That night, I pulled my suitcase from the closet. I didn't pack everything, not yet. I simply placed it beside the bed. Then I looked at Edward's photograph and whispered, "I think I finally understand what you meant." Before he died, Edward had once told me, "Thea, don't spend the rest of your life proving you're useful. You're allowed to simply be loved." I hadn't understood him then. I understood him now. 3 days later, Garrett's promotion party became the center of the household. He had been promoted to senior regional director, and he wanted his boss, Walter Crane, to see him as successful, organized, and respected. 14 people were expected. Garrett had already chosen the menu. Caroline showed me the list. "Mom, can you handle this?" I looked down at the paper. "All of it?" She smiled nervously. "You're such a good cook." I folded the paper once. "And where am I supposed to sit?" Caroline didn't answer immediately. "Mom, just answer me," she sighed. "Garrett thinks it might be better if you stayed in the kitchen during the party." There it was again, the kitchen, the invisible room where they had slowly placed me. "Because I'm embarrassing?" I asked. "No, that's not what he means." "Then what does he mean?" She rubbed her forehead. "His boss doesn't know you. Garrett wants the evening to be professional." I almost laughed. "Professional." I looked around the kitchen. "And what exactly am I doing here, hosting a professional dinner while hiding behind the refrigerator?" "Mom, please." "I'm not angry, Caroline." And that was true. "I'm disappointed." She looked down. For the first time, I saw something like shame on her face. But it disappeared quickly. "Can you just do this one thing for us?" she whispered. I nodded. "Sure." That night, I called Frank. Frank had worked with me for years before retirement. He had also known Edward. More importantly, he knew me before I became grandma and mom and the woman everyone depended on. "Tell me the truth," I said. "Do you think I'm making too much of this?" He didn't answer immediately. "Thea, you know what I think. Say it anyway. You're being used." The word hurt because it was so simple. "I don't want to believe that." "Then don't believe me. Believe what they've been showing you." I looked at the suitcase beside my bed. "I'm leaving." "When?" "Tomorrow morning." "Where will you go?" "Somewhere small." "Somewhere mine." Frank exhaled slowly. "Good." I expected him to argue. Instead, he said, "I'll be there Saturday." "For the party?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I want to see how they explain your absence." I smiled for the first time that day. Friday night, I began preparing everything. I could have cooked the entire party. I knew exactly how. I had hosted dinners for 20 people before. But I stopped halfway through the preparation. I put the ingredients back in the refrigerator. Then I washed my hands. I walked upstairs and started packing. My clothes went into the suitcase first, then Edward's photograph, then my jewelry, then the small box containing our wedding ring. I left behind the things I had bought for Caroline's house, the kitchen towels, the extra dishes, the apron. Those things belonged there. My dignity did not. At 11:40 p.m., I wrote a note. It wasn't long. Caroline, I love you, but I cannot continue living as though my place in this family depends on what I can do for everyone. I hope Garrett's party goes well. I'm leaving quietly because I don't want the children caught in the middle. Please don't come looking for me tonight. I need time. I placed the note on the kitchen counter. Then I went upstairs one final time. I kissed the photograph of Edward. Let's go home, I whispered. Except this time, home wouldn't be the house we had shared. Home would have to be somewhere new. At 6:15 Saturday morning, I carried my suitcase downstairs. I wore jeans, a soft sweater, and the coat Edward had bought me before our 20th anniversary. The house was still asleep. I stood in the hallway for a moment and looked toward Caroline's bedroom. My daughter was inside. My grandchildren were asleep upstairs. Every part of me wanted to knock. Every part of me wanted to say goodbye. But I knew if I did, I would be pulled into another conversation where I'd be asked to stay just a little longer. So I didn't knock. I opened the front door and stepped outside. The morning air was cold. I put my suitcase into my car and sat behind the wheel. For several seconds, I couldn't start the engine. I looked at the house. This had been supposed to be the place where I recovered after losing Edward. Instead, it had become the place where I forgot myself. I started the car. I didn't look back. My first stop was a small hotel in Westfield. Margaret had already found me a place to stay for a few nights. I checked in, took my suitcase upstairs, and turned my phone off. Then I sat on the bed. No children, no laundry. No dinner schedule. No one asking me where something was. The silence felt strange, then it felt beautiful. I slept for 4 hours. When I woke, it was almost noon. I ordered lunch from a little restaurant downstairs and ate it in my room while watching an old movie. That evening, I took a long shower and went to bed early. Meanwhile, back at Caroline's house, the party was beginning. Garrett's guests arrived around 6. The problem was that there was no food. Caroline walked into the kitchen and stared at the refrigerator. The prime rib was still there. The vegetables were untouched. The dessert hadn't been made. The ingredients for the appetizers were sitting exactly where I had left them. She picked up my note. She read it once, then again. Garrett walked in behind her. "Where's your mother?" he asked. Caroline didn't answer. She handed him the note. His face changed as he read it. "She left." "Yes. When?" "This morning." Garrett looked at the unfinished kitchen. "She knew about tonight." Caroline's eyes filled with tears. "She knew." He picked up his phone. "Call her." Caroline called me. My phone was off. She called again. Still off. She called Margaret. Margaret answered. "Where is she?" Caroline asked. "She's safe." "I need to talk to her." "Not today." "Mom can't just disappear." Margaret's voice became firm. "She didn't disappear. She left." Then she hung up. At 6:30, the guests began arriving. Garrett had no choice but to pretend everything was under control. He ordered food from a steakhouse. It arrived in disposable containers. The 14 guests sat around the dining table. Garrett smiled. He shook hands. He talked about his promotion, but everyone noticed something was missing. Walter Crane, his boss, asked Caroline, "Where's your mother? I was looking forward to meeting her." Caroline looked down. "She needed some time." Walter nodded. Then Frank arrived. He looked at the empty kitchen, the takeout containers, and Caroline's face. He understood immediately. He didn't say anything for several minutes. Then Walter asked him, "You know Thea, don't you?" Frank nodded. "I do." "Is she okay?" Frank looked directly at Garrett. "She's fine." He paused. "She just finally realized she doesn't have to earn her place in her daughter's family by working for it." The room went silent. Garrett's smile disappeared. Nobody shouted. Nobody slammed a glass onto the table. That would have been easier for Garrett. Instead, Walter simply looked at him and asked, "What happened?" Garrett straightened his shoulders. "It's a family matter." Frank nodded. It is. Then he looked around the table. But you should know what kind of person you're celebrating tonight. Caroline's face turned pale. Frank, I'm not trying to embarrass anyone, he said. But Thea was cooking, cleaning, babysitting, driving, doing laundry, and organizing this entire household while sleeping in the guest room. And when she asked for one evening to herself, she was told she could either become a full-time babysitter or move out. Garrett's jaw tightened. That's not exactly what I said. Frank looked at him. Then tell them what you said. Garrett said nothing. Walter leaned back in his chair. Garrett? For the first time all evening, Garrett didn't have an answer. Caroline started crying quietly. I didn't think she would actually leave. Frank looked at her. That's the problem. The guests became uncomfortable. One by one, they started making excuses to leave early. Walter stayed until almost 9. Before leaving, he shook Garrett's hand. We'll talk Monday. Garrett nodded. Of course. Walter paused. And Garrett, yes, your mother-in-law sounds like a remarkable woman. Then he walked out. The next morning, my phone remained off. I had no idea what had happened. I spent Sunday morning looking at apartments. By Monday afternoon, I had signed a lease for a small one-bedroom apartment. It wasn't luxurious. It didn't need to be. It had a tiny kitchen, a sunny window, a bedroom big enough for my bed, and a small balcony where I could put plants. When I turned the key for the first time, I stood inside and smiled. Mine, I whispered. That single word meant more than I expected. I called Margaret. I found a place. Good. It's tiny. You don't need a mansion. I laughed. I know. That evening, I went to the grocery store and bought exactly what I wanted. 1 steak, fresh vegetables, coffee, a bottle of wine, no family-sized packages, no children's snacks, no bulk laundry detergent, just food for one woman, my own food. I cooked slowly. Then I sat at my tiny table and ate dinner by myself. And for the first time since Edward died, I wasn't lonely. I was alone. There is a difference. Loneliness is being surrounded by people who don't see you. Being alone is finally having space to hear yourself again. The next morning, my phone showed 14 missed calls from Caroline, 6 from Garrett, 4 from mutual friends, 1 from Frank. 25 total. I stared at the screen. I wasn't ready. I put the phone down. That afternoon, Caroline called again. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. I watched it. Then the screen went dark. 26 missed calls. I still didn't answer. For 11 days, I didn't return Caroline's calls. I didn't block her. I didn't punish her. I simply needed silence. I needed to know who I was when nobody was asking me to solve something. During those 11 days, I went back to the woodturning class. I bought a small plant for my balcony. I learned which grocery store had the best bread. I found a little coffee shop where the owner already knew my order by the 3rd visit. I started walking every morning. I even joined a local book club. Small things, ordinary things, but they were mine. On the 5th day, Caroline sent me a long text. Mom, I don't know how to fix this. I didn't answer. On the 7th day, another message came. I miss you. I stared at those words for a long time. I missed her too. That was the hardest part. Leaving didn't mean I stopped loving my daughter. It meant I stopped allowing love to become an excuse for disrespect. On the 9th day, Margaret called me. How are you? Good. Really? I looked around my apartment. Really? She smiled through the phone. Then don't rush. On the 11th day, there was a knock on my apartment door. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Caroline was standing there. She looked exhausted. Her hair was pulled back. She wasn't wearing makeup. She looked less like the confident woman who had told me to stay in the kitchen and more like the daughter I remembered from childhood. Can I come in? She whispered. I stepped aside. She entered slowly. She looked around my apartment. It's small. I like it, she nodded. Then she sat down. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, Mom, I'm sorry. I waited. Not because you left, because I gave you a reason to. Tears rolled down her face. I kept telling myself you were helping because you wanted to. I never stopped to ask if you were happy. I sat across from her. Why didn't you ask? She looked down. Because I was afraid you'd say no. That answer hurt more than I expected. Then you knew, she nodded. Somewhere inside, yes. I took a breath. Caroline, I love you, but I need you to understand something. I am your mother. I am not your employee. I know. And I'm your children's grandmother. I'm not their free child care. She wiped her eyes. I know. And Garrett, she hesitated. He's been under a lot of pressure. I shook my head gently. Don't explain him to me. She became silent. You don't need to defend him. You need to decide what kind of marriage you want and what kind of woman you want to be. She looked at me. I'm already seeing a therapist. I smiled softly. Good. And Garrett is too. That surprised me. Really? She nodded. He says he didn't realize how bad it had become. I looked toward the window. Maybe he didn't. Caroline reached for my hand. I let her take it. But I'm not moving back, I said. Her eyes filled again. I know. And for the first time, she didn't ask me to. Garrett called me the following Friday evening. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. Hello. There was silence on the other end. Then he said, Thea. It was the first time he had said my name with warmth in his voice. Yes. I owe you an apology. I didn't say anything. I treated you like you were there to make our lives easier. I didn't realize what I was doing. You didn't realize. I know how that sounds. He took a breath. My mother did everything for our family. I grew up thinking that was what women did when they loved their families. I closed my eyes. That's not love, Garrett. That's conditioning. He was quiet. You're right. I didn't expect that. I thought if I provided financially, everything else was balanced, he continued. I didn't see what Caroline and I were asking you to carry. And when you told me to babysit or move out, I was angry, stressed. I said something cruel because I thought you would stay anyway. There it was, the truth. You were right about one thing, I told him. I did stay because I loved my daughter, but you were wrong about another thing. Love doesn't mean I have to stay somewhere I'm not respected. I understand that now. Good. We sat in silence. Are you coming back for the kids? He asked. I smiled sadly. Of course. They're my grandchildren. Thank you. But visits will be visits. I understand. And that was it. No dramatic reconciliation, no magical transformation, just two adults finally speaking honestly. The next Sunday, Owen and Ruby came to my apartment with Caroline. They ran onto the balcony and immediately started arguing over which plant was theirs. I laughed. Caroline stood in the kitchen watching us. You look happy, she said. I am, she nodded. I think I forgot what you looked like when you were happy. I looked at her. So did I. We spent the afternoon together. No cooking marathon, no laundry, no cleaning. We ordered pizza. The children watched a movie. Caroline helped me water the plants. When they left, Owen hugged me. Grandma, can we come again next week? Anytime. Ruby squeezed me tighter. I like your house. I smiled. Me too. After the door closed, I stood alone in my apartment. It was quiet again, but this time the quiet didn't hurt. It felt like peace. A month later, Caroline told me something I didn't expect. Mom, the party changed everything. I looked at her. How? She sighed. Garrett's promotion didn't go the way he thought it would. Walter had become more distant, not cruel, not openly hostile, but he had started paying attention to Garrett's leadership style. He told Garrett that the way someone treats people who work for them tells you more than how they treat people above them. I smiled faintly. That's true. Caroline nodded. Garrett realized Walter wasn't talking about his employees. I didn't need her to explain. Garrett had spent months expecting me to serve the household without ever asking what I wanted. His boss had seen one evening of it and understood enough. But I wasn't interested in revenge. I had already gotten something better. Freedom. A few weeks later, I bought a small wooden lathe for my apartment's storage room. It wasn't as big as Edward's. It didn't need to be. I began making small bowls, then candle holders, then decorative pieces. I gave some to Caroline. I sold a few at a local craft fair. People started asking where I learned. I would smile and say, my husband taught me. One Saturday, I was standing at my little booth when Caroline arrived with the children. She picked up a wooden bowl. How much? She asked. For you, nothing. Mom, fine, $10, she laughed. You're impossible. I learned from your father. We both smiled. It was the first time we had laughed about Edward without immediately becoming sad. That evening, after the children left, I sat on my balcony. The sun was going down. I thought about the 26 missed calls. At the time, I had thought they were proof that they needed me. Now I understood they were proof that my absence had forced them to notice me. There is a difference. When you're always available, people can forget you're a person. They see the service, not the sacrifice. They see the result, not the effort. They see the clean house, not the woman who stayed awake washing dishes. They see dinner on the table, not the hands that prepared it. Leaving didn't make me more valuable. It simply made my value impossible to ignore, and I didn't need anyone to understand that anymore. I knew it myself. 6 months after I left, Caroline and Garrett renewed their vows in a small ceremony. They didn't invite 100 people. They didn't make it extravagant. They simply wanted to start again. Caroline asked if I would attend. I said yes, but I told her something first. "I'm coming as your mother," she smiled. "That's all I want." At the ceremony, Garrett came to me before anyone else. "Thank you for coming." "Of course." He looked nervous. "I hope someday you'll forgive me completely." I considered his words. "I already forgave you." His shoulders relaxed. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting." "I know. And it doesn't mean moving back." He smiled. "I know that too." That was the answer I needed. The children ran around the garden. Caroline laughed. Garrett looked happier than I had seen him in months, and I realized something important. I didn't need my old life back. I needed a new one. A life where I could love my family without disappearing inside their needs. A life where I could be a grandmother without becoming a nanny, a mother without becoming a servant, a widow without becoming a woman who had stopped living. I was 61. I had thought that meant my biggest chapters were behind me. I was wrong. Sometimes the best chapters begin after you finally stop living according to somebody else's expectations. I still visited Caroline. She still visited me. We cooked together sometimes. We went shopping. We talked about Edward. We talked about therapy. We talked about the children. But now there were boundaries. Healthy ones. And strangely enough, our relationship became stronger because of them. Caroline started asking before assuming. Garrett started helping with the children. Owen learned to make his own breakfast. Ruby started folding her own clothes. And I smiled every time I heard Caroline say, "Mom, do you have time?" instead of "Mom, can you?" That little difference meant everything. People sometimes ask me whether I regret leaving that morning. I don't. I regret that it took me so long. I regret ignoring the little signs, the laundry basket outside my room, the class I stopped attending, the dinners I cooked without being asked, the way I slowly stopped making plans for myself because somebody else always needed something. But I don't regret the suitcase. I don't regret the quiet goodbye, and I definitely don't regret the 26 missed calls. Not because I wanted Caroline to suffer, not because I wanted Garrett embarrassed, but because those calls marked the moment they finally understood that I wasn't furniture in their house. I wasn't a service. I wasn't an obligation. I was a woman with a life of my own. When I look back now, the strangest part isn't that Garrett told me to babysit my grandchildren or move out. The strangest part is that I almost stayed. I almost convinced myself that because I was 61, because I was a widow, because I loved my daughter, I had no right to start over. But I did. I moved into a tiny apartment. I returned to something I loved. I made new friends. I learned to enjoy mornings alone. I discovered that being alone isn't the same as being lonely. And I learned that sometimes leaving quietly is more powerful than screaming ever could be. 11 days after I walked out, my phone showed 26 missed calls. Today, if my phone rings 26 times, I don't panic. I don't immediately run to fix whatever problem is waiting. I look at the screen. I breathe. And then I decide whether I want to answer, because my life belongs to me now. If you've ever been made to feel that your worth depends on what you do for other people, I hope you remember what I learned at 61. ***, you can love your family without losing yourself. You can help without becoming responsible for everyone. And you can leave a place quietly without being the villain. ***, sometimes the strongest revenge isn't making someone hurt. It's building a life so peaceful that you no longer need their approval. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. And tell me honestly, if your family gave you the choice, help us or move out, what would you do? Thank you for watching.